Nearly 1 in every 166 babies born in the United States will be diagnosed with autism. This mysterious developmental disorder is increasing so rapidly that some experts predict by the end of the next decade there will be 4 million autistic Americans. As with many misunderstood disorders, there are stereotypes, but those who deal with the autistic will tell you that each child is an individual with the ability to learn and function. Recently, I met with some local families touched by autism and was introduced to two extraordinary young men, Seth and Derek.
Seth was the most perfect baby, and every day I would say to him, Seth, you are perfect. And one day I said it in front of his pediatrician. He said, what are you going to say if he ever isn't perfect?
Seth Chwast has always had sparkling, beautiful eyes, but you never quite knew what was going on behind them. Look into his eyes today, and he'll most likely look away. He'd rather you see his paintings. For Seth, holding a paintbrush comes naturally. Words do not.
Red. Brown goes to the horse with red details of brown.
We found out that there was a problem just before he was 2. He was different. That's all. He's just different. And my fear was what would happen when we interfaced with reality. That was my fear, with the people who would expect him to talk or expect him to be normal, expect him to be like they were.
Fantasy Horse and Horse's book from library.
Like many autistic, Seth's speech is halting and difficult. It's almost an audible reminder that he is an outsider. His art is a window into a world different than ours, a world that is isolated, detached, but can be equally full of joy.
I think, honestly, I have no idea what goes on in Seth's head. I wish I knew what Seth sees and what he hears.
Autism is a developmental disability. And it is a developmental disability that primarily affects a child's communication. Imagine if you're transported to a foreign country and you don't understand the language, and you don't have a way to interpret the environment or interpret what it is that people want from you, and you don't have a way of expressing what you need. It's very scary, and you would begin to feel anxious and to feel confused. That is what it is like frequently for a child with autism. It is like going to a foreign country without any tools to help you get through it.
And while Seth's words can be limited, often his senses are overly active. Light, sound, texture can all seem extreme, even painful. For Seth, the simple buzz of an electric light roars in his ears. To cope with the constant and overpowering noise, he wears earplugs.
It becomes difficult to make friends, to keep friends, to interact well in a regular classroom setting. So because of the overwhelming communication deficit that the children have, every area of their life is impacted.
Autism was first identified in 1943. For years, doctors told families with autistic children that the disorder was their fault. They blamed it on, quote, cold parenting. Moms of autistic kids became known as refrigerator mothers.
It was thought to be an emotional disorder. That was not that long ago.
I called one place to get help, and the woman said, well, I'll start by seeing you 3 times a week. And I said, why? And she said, well, don't you wonder why your son doesn't talk? I thought, oh my God, this woman thinks it's me.
Today, we know no mother causes her child's autism. It's a neurological development disorder. But we still don't know what causes it. Yet perhaps the most upsetting mystery is the puzzling rise in cases.
We certainly are seeing an increase. 10 years ago, 1 in 10,000 children were diagnosed with autism. Today, the statistic is an alarming 1 in 166 children. The Center for Disease Control has called autism an epidemic.
The numbers are alarming. According to the U.S. Department of Special Education, autism rates escalated nationally 782% between 1992 and 2003. In Ohio, during that same time period, our state saw a staggering 23,291% cumulative growth in autism. It is the fastest growing disability today.
I think that there is probably no family, nobody who has been untouched by autism. In today's world, it seems as if everyone knows someone who has a child with autism.
No one can explain the increase in cases, and as perplexing as that is, there is some good news. Researchers are finding new therapies that make a difference. 9 years ago, Derek Russick was diagnosed with autism. His mom will never forget that day.
It was part denial and part devastation, because I was handed a brochure that said it was a lifelong disorder and he would prefer to sit in a corner by himself, hand flapping and rocking.
Stella wanted more for her son, but his troubled behavior was overwhelming.
Temper tantrums, hours long, every day, just total frustration, total anxiety. I didn't know why he was getting so upset. I didn't know what would trigger them. Just crying, kicking, screaming, you name it, he did it every day. But his only way to communicate was to have a meltdown.
But things started to change dramatically once Derek began going to a special school for autistic children.
Great job. Can I have a high five? Nice work.
The Shaker Heights Monarch School works intensely one-on-one with children. Their goal is to give autistic children the language they need for life.
What we do know is that all behavior has meaning, and so what we need to do is help to understand what they're trying to communicate with us, and at the same time give them a communication system so that they can let us know what it is that they need and what they want.
The school operates in partnership with Harvard University. They are working together to create new ways to help autistic children overcome the isolation. Look around and you'll notice pictures everywhere. Because language is difficult for these kids, the school builds on images. For Derek, it has made all the difference. He has gone from using just a handful of words to expressing himself in short sentences.
I went to go to the park with my friend.
Now that he can talk about his feelings, his mom says his tantrums have decreased.
We actually had to teach him how to enter into our world, and we had to learn how to enter into his.
Every small step helps a child to have the childhood that we all hope our children will have.
For many autistic, the simplicity of childhood may never end. And while the quest continues to learn how we can help them, moms like Deborah Chwast say we can also pause and learn from them.
Some people just write him off, and they act as if he's invisible and they don't even see him. And I think if you see how amazing he is, that something will happen, some dance between you and Seth, and he'll change your life.
Blue house, orange house.